Welcome, everybody, to Democracy Comes Alive. I'm so thrilled that you're here with us for this epic journey all day into the night live stream featuring appearances, performances, and conversations with some of our favorite artists from the psychedelic music scene. I'm Ari Fink from SiriusXM, and later on, you're going to be hearing from Phil Esch and Friends, performances from Warren Haynes, Billy Strings, Dawes, Michael Franti, Slightly Stupid, Moon Taxi, the list goes on and on. Dozens of artists will be sharing their talents with you, and also some exciting conversations with Fish drummer Jonathan Fishman, Stefan Lassard from the Dave Matthews Band, Bill Kreutzmann, Bob Weir from the Grateful Dead, Mark Brownstein from the Disco Biscuits, but that's not really the reason why we're here. We are here to get out the vote and make sure that you're registered to vote and help spread awareness about this upcoming election. And I'm joined by someone who is extremely qualified, probably the most qualified person to help us launch Democracy Comes Alive, Andy Bernstein from his back porch. What's up, Andy?
Hey, Ari, how are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you. And thank you for all your efforts with HeadCount.org as the executive chairman. I know that it's been an incredibly busy voting season, and you guys just surpassed a pretty important milestone, right?
Yeah, we had set a goal a couple of years ago to register 200,000 voters for this election, and we passed it on, I think, Wednesday of last week. And it was, obviously very challenging because originally the way we were going to register a lot of those voters was at concerts, out on tour with Dead and Company and Fish and Billie Eilish and all the artists we work with. But we pivoted. We took an all digital approach, or mostly digital approach. And we've had record traffic on our website. We've had more people register to vote at headcount.org than ever before. We've also had, I think, over 100,000 people have checked their voter registration status at headcount.org. And I think we're adding it up. It looks like by the election, there'll be over 2 million actions taken digitally through HeadCount. All things like requesting an absentee ballot, finding your polling place, seeing what's on your ballot, things along those lines. So it's been a wild ride, a lot of challenges, but a lot of solutions found. And we're finding that people care. People are really excited to vote, and they're making their voting plans and using us as a resource to do that.
We're so proud of your efforts, especially recently. In the past 6 months, things have been amazingly challenging, just so challenging. Things that we didn't expect to happen, obviously, have occurred and put us all in compromising positions, but you guys have powered through, and the numbers speak for themselves. We really appreciate all of your efforts and your team's efforts. What are some of the ways that you guys pivoted to digital once, concerts started to get canceled in the springtime?
Well, I'd say the first big thing we rolled out was we created a sort of contest platform where you could enter contests by checking your voter registration status. And that had never really been done before. And now we've run I don't know how many of these, probably over 100 if you include what we're doing with Global Citizen and a campaign called Just Vote. And so Dave Matthews did one and Fish did one. And then with Global Citizen, we had one with Taylor Swift and Usher and DJ Khaled. And we did a whole festival that Cam Franklin was in, where we gated it, where the way you could watch the virtual festival was to check your voter registration status. And we found that when people checked their status, a lot of people found they weren't registered. So we were able to really tens of thousands of people registered to vote just through those things. And then we did a lot more than that. We did a big campaign for National Voter Registration Day, where artists were wearing vote masks or these vote t-shirts from American Eagle Outfitters. We did a big partnership with Spotify, which is probably our #1 partnership in terms of registering voters. And we just kept really busy. I mean, I look at everything we did. It wasn't any one thing. It just all added up. And I'm very grateful to the music industry that got really behind us. I mean, we have so many partners. We partnered with the Grammys, with Atlantic Records, with ASCAP, with Vivo. I could go on and on. And I worked with a lot of festivals. We did something called the Festival Challenge. And the artists were great, the partners were great, and the HeadCount volunteers and staff just worked harder than ever. So I'm really amazed with what's happened. It's been a good feeling. It's actually been for us, for HeadCount, what could have been the worst possible thing has actually been really uplifting. And I just hope that momentum carries us through the election and we see record turnout.
Yeah, for sure. It's been so amazing to see these artists getting involved in new and creative ways. I mean, I remember, 2 or 3 elections ago where people would record audio IDs and spots and, simple things to get the word out. But now you have artists making these amazingly creative videos that have been spreading all across the internet. Trey comes to mind. Sophie Tucker comes to mind as another one. It must have been cool to see the artists sinking into their creativity to help spread the word.
Yeah, it's been great. Mike Gordon did one, Rob from Mo did one, Dave Matthews did one. And then we had some like huge pop stars do them on like Instagram stories. So Cardi B, Bow Wow, I think DJ Khaled did one. Like, and we're reaching the core that HeadCount was built around, which is the jam scene. And then we're reaching way, way, way beyond that. So I've found again, like this period, it spurred creativity. I think that for artists and we're very aware of how incredibly challenging this time is for artists just to earn a living. And for promoters, especially independent promoters. And we're working with NEVA and NIDO, the 2 organizations that are really focused on independent music and saving it essentially. And, we're very aware of that. So for the artists to take their time when really they have, just putting food on the table for a lot of artists is a challenge, that they've still taken the time to support HeadCount and support the cause, participate in Democracy Comes Alive. It's really gratifying and really meaningful.
For sure. Yeah, it's been amazing to see. We're super proud of you guys. We have an amazing show for you today. And Andy has brought along another incredible person to join the conversation, Cam Franklin from The Suffers. Andy, tell us how Cam got involved with HeadCount.
Well, I'll let Cam tell at least half the story, but I'll start by saying that we did a tour with Jim James, a college tour a couple years ago, and Jim brought in Cam, and I just remember hanging backstage with Cam before I'd even seen her perform, and just listening to Cam talk and her worldview. I immediately was like, I so want to get to know this person better and have her involved in HeadCount. And that was before I saw her walk out on stage and get probably the biggest round of applause of the night. This was in Austin, Texas, and the crowd knew Cam Franklin very well and heard her amazing voice. And since then, Cam has joined HeadCount's board of directors and been one of the people that I turn to most for advice on key things. And I'm very grateful to her. And I wanted her to be in this conversation here with me.
For sure. Yeah. Hey, Cam, how you doing? Thanks for joining us here on Democracy Comes Alive.
Hi, I am so happy to be here representing my band, representing Houston, Texas. I wanted to say thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much to Andy for including me, and thank you to Jim James, I guess, for connecting us and just being a top-notch human being all the time. But yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
Now you're in Houston, right, Cam? That's your hometown?
Yes, I am in Houston. Usually when it's not a COVID-19 year, I tour about 80% of the year, but I've been home longer than I've been in a really long time.
Enjoying the 5 days of fall, as you mentioned.
Yes, all 5 of them.
Well, I'm glad that our timing works out. Now, Houston is a city that has changed quite a bit. It's becoming more and more important politically, being one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the country. What's happening there politically and culturally right now that you can share with our audience?
Politically, I would be proud to say that Houston has been a very progressive city for quite some time, while the state of Texas has taken its own time to follow that lead. Houston has voted very blue, very Democratic for the last, 2 elections at least. However, my focus and my initiative, all of my initiatives with HeadCount have been more so on getting people registered to vote rather than focusing on what side. And growing up here, I feel like to live in Houston, to exist in Houston, you grow up being bipartisan. You grow up knowing that everything's not gonna work out your way. Me, especially being a Black woman, I have gotten to learn in a very slow, progressive way that not only would I have to think differently, speak differently, live differently to just exist in a safe way, but as the world continues to change, and we're now seeing these very dramatic ways that it's changing in how not only the Black community engages with everybody else, but and what we're seeing with law enforcement and what we're seeing happen just on a grand scale with our government. I am so grateful to be alive in this era. I feel like this period of change is something that I heard about growing up, that it would one day happen, but it never really seemed that close or within grasp. And I feel that with involving myself with initiatives like what we see with HeadCount, like what we see with Democracy Comes Alive, by donating my time to causes that are much bigger than me, and to causes that I feel that allow us to all come together. It's a basic representation of where I come from, and in a city that has always had to work together to get those little changes made. Culturally, it's a food capital. We have every demographic that you can think of represented here. I always joke with my friends that come up in the music scene here that people are going to think we're so weird when we leave Houston. And I've always been one of those people where I feel like if you just put the work in and you put the time in, it's going to happen. And you can ask any of my friends that have known me from Lizzo to Khruangbin, like growing up, but that's just how I've always been. It's just a matter of time and a matter of work, because growing up in a city that has everything, where you learn punk, you learn ska, you learn Tejano, you learn, jam, and it's just a part of our upbringing, because we are taught that we don't get to go to the New Yorks or the LAs until we learn how to do it all down here. So culturally, I feel like it's just growing and flourishing, and I could go on and on and on about how much I love Houston and its people, but you'll just have to come down and eat and see it for yourself one day.
I'm definitely making plans too. Whenever it's safe, sometime soon. My fingers are
I know.
crossed.
Oh my
right?
gosh, I forgot. Yeah, don't come right now.
But soon, but sometime. We're making small steps to get there, as you said, both politically, and as a society, wearing masks and maintaining our distance right now so that we can gather and we can celebrate together in person sometime really soon. Cam, I'm curious, how did you perceive voting growing up as a kid?
How did I perceive it?
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a house where voting wasn't looked at as an option. It was looked at as a right that we had to earn, that we had to fight for. My mom, aside from just being an avid reader, was very big on, instead of punishing me in a traditional way, punishing me with knowledge. And sometimes it worked out against her, but growing up in a land where Barbara Jordan and Beyonce were considered idols to me, being a Black woman that is allowed to express myself in a free way, I know that that was not always the case, because of the women who raised me, because of the books that I read, because of the environment that I grew up in down here in Texas. I know that the power of voting gives me the right to keep speaking the way I want to. I know that it gives me a right to change things at a local level, that I can feel a lot more, I don't know what the word is. I can see those changes a lot faster than maybe what I would be able to see by voting for just the president alone. However, that was something that my parents taught me early on. Hey, if you don't like a DA, you can vote them out. If you don't like a constable, you can vote them out. If you don't like a sheriff, you can vote them out. However, those are things that I was taught at home. We could go into the Texas education system another day, but they don't teach any of that, even though there's a whole class on Texas history. So, thankfully, I had people that were constantly teaching me for my own safety, for my own knowledge. But it is not commonly known across the board that it's a power tool more than a let's throw it in the garbage tool.
That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious about your experiences with HeadCount thus far. I'd love to hear about some of your highlights being on the board.
Uh, yeah. So early on, it was pretty overwhelming because, there were so many people on the board that have been on the board either for so long, or they had such deep ties within a jam community. But a lot of folks don't know this about me, and I've expressed this to Andy, that before I was able to do music full time, I worked 7 years in oil and gas in an international bank. And I know what true diversity looks like. And, being able to come to Andy and say, this board is not diverse enough for me to feel vocal about the things that I need to say, and not just in terms of Black and white, but in age and women. There can always be more women. And, instead of doing what I believe to be normal in 2018 music industry times, which would have been, shut up, Cam, go away, Cam. I'm gonna, blacklist you on things for speaking against what I agree to know and be true. Andy listened and was vocal about how, yeah, they could improve on that, and how, yeah, I was right about that. And 2 years later, as we've gone through certain changes and we've brought more people onto the board, we've brought younger people onto the board, HeadCount has had now more access to things and to more people that I don't think they would have had Andy not done just the simple task of listening to a Black woman every once in a while. And I appreciate him so much, but I also have learned so much on the board from seeing how an organization at this level works. This opportunity that was given to me is something that I don't take very lightly. And I understand that, Andy and the rest of the board could have, again, been very traditional with the gatekeeping, but instead they've allowed me to come in and learn and grow. And through the practices that I see them enact, I've been able to be so much better and so much more efficient, not only in the other organizations that I work with, but with other artists. And into my, again, I bring up the topic of education, but as an artist, self-education is something that isn't talked about enough, and it's something that doesn't stop. And I'm looking at HeadCount's board of directors and seeing all these different parts of the industry and all these different relationships coming together to work towards this greater cause, which is getting people registered to vote. But it has me thinking, like, how can this be applied in other ways? How can this type of camaraderie be brought back, in a post-COVID world, from how the artist interacts with everybody, from industry heads to folks at radio to, the promoter, the local promoter that we see in city to city to city. And I feel like, yes, there are things and ways that we all know that work right now and work for some artists, but I feel like for the more non-traditional artists, for the more non-traditional music executive, for that next generation that hasn't been brought up with those same opportunities, with those same moments. Like I keep using the word opportunity because I do look at a board seat as just that, an opportunity not only to enact change, but to grow as an individual on that board.
Wow. Well, we're so happy that you're doing it. We are so happy that you're involved. Andy, I know that Cam has made a huge impact, and I'm so glad that you brought her into this conversation. Cam, I want you to stay safe and stay healthy, and hopefully you'll be getting back out on the road soon, and we'll be seeing you on stage with the Suffers sooner rather than later. Yes. We really appreciate it. Andy, before we let you go, I want to know from you, what are the takeaways that you'd like our viewing audience today to remember about this upcoming election, about the nuts and bolts? Talk to us, man.
Well, I think one thing everyone should know is the thing that has the most influence on whether people vote is their friends and family. So even if you're voting, don't stop there. Try to make sure all your friends and family are voting. We just launched a new thing on our website called headcount.org/talkaboutvoting. And it's little tips on how to talk to friends who might not otherwise vote. And we all have them. Only about half of young people in America vote. So if you've got friends, there's a good chance you have friends who don't vote. So check out headcount.org/talkaboutvoting, and it'll give some basic tips. I mean, our biggest tip is, listen, don't judge. You know, nobody likes having a finger wagged in their face, but people have kind of consistent reasons why they say they're not going to vote. And we address some of those reasons and give you kind of little nice but snappy comebacks. So check out headcount.org/talkaboutvoting, or visit our website for any kind of resource. We have so much on the website. We have a lot about mail-in voting and ways to avoid having your mail-in ballot discarded, which can really happen. Our campaign is called Make Your Vote Count, and it's about like kind of simple tips to make sure if you are voting by mail that it counts, and also voting early as an alternative. We have many, many things on our website. Our team has been working really for years to get to this moment and researching it all. So big props to Tappan Vickery, our in-house expert, and Elise Granada, our digital guru, who've just brought so many free resources to our community. So Ari, thank you. I want to say thank you to Kunj and Sarah Shah and everybody at Live for Live Music for putting this together. We've been really blessed by so much generosity in the community. Thank you to everybody who's viewing, who either checked their registration status or made a donation. Those are the fuel, especially checking your registration status. It's something everybody should do. If you haven't checked your registration status yet, you should. The deadlines to register to vote start tomorrow, right after Democracy Comes Alive. We've timed this intentionally. You still have time to register to vote. You still have time to check your status. Do that while you're enjoying the music, and tell friends. And if we all do that, then we're going to have record turnout in November.
And HeadCount will have played no small part in that, Andy. We can't thank you enough. You know, one thing that I was super impressed with HeadCount.org's information was the by-state information about voting early, where to go, you know, where to click on, and that's something that's super helpful as well. Voting in person and early is one of the best ways to cast your ballot. I'm going to let Andy Bernstein and Cam Franklin go, and we're going to listen to some music and check out Karina Reichman right now, getting the party started on Democracy Comes Alive.